this pre-season so far. So the young ruckman there probably is the Bombers' backup to Draper for 2021. We'll see him in this second half.
Looks like most of the Blues are still out there for the second half. We're expecting Lockie O'Brien and Michael Gibbons to have a bit of a run out. We saw Oscar McDonald and Callum Moore in that first half at stages as well. Liam Stocker's another one who's still got the training top on, so might just be playing the final term. But as you mentioned, Nick Bryan now in the ruck against Mark Pitney. Not hard to miss with that bleached blonde mullet, is he, as Sam Walsh gets the first clearance of the second half. Does Nick Bryan get his opportunity this year, do you reckon, Cal?
I think there'll be a stage where he probably does. They've also got Andrew Phillips, of course, the former Blue, on their list, who's another ready-made ruck option. But yeah, the signs from Bryan across the pre-season, they like his athleticism. I remember watching him through the Oakley Chargers program at under 18 level in the NAB League, and his skills are really good as well. He's got the ball now.
It's coming back, I think, for a throw against Zach Williams, it might have been in the end.
And Cutler, one of the players who didn't play in the first half, into the action early here. Starting on the wing, the Bombers like his athleticism. He's a long kick. He can run all day. It's about piecing those things together for the former Brisbane Lion, who played a handful of games last year in his first year at Essendon, having crossed from the Lions at the end of 2019.
So here is Nick Cox on the far side of the ground. He's built a bit like a stick, isn't he? But he can move at close to 200 centimetres, and he drills that long inside 50. Darcy Parish nearly got underneath it, but the Blues were able to clear through. Might have been Adam Sard in the end. Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti's looked dangerous throughout the entirety of this game so far, and he's got a few nice side steps, but he's
tried a bit too much there.
Just a trip at an inopportune moment there from Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti, and Tom Williamson dragged him down. Playing still predominantly across halfback, Tom Williamson. We mentioned before that he has pushed onto a wing at times throughout the summer so far, but looks like he's going to find his role at halfback, particularly early in the season. I think maybe with Nick Newman still sidelined with that knee injury. It's kept him out since round 2 last year. I think that's where he'll probably find his home in the early stage of the season. That's a really nice mark from Harrison Jones, who's had a couple of really good moments in this game, hasn't he, Cal?
Yeah, another player who you just want to see some moments from, and that's been one. His lead out of the goal scorer earlier and the finish on goal in the first term was another exciting passage of play. So the pieces are coming together for Harrison Jones. He's had that year of development last year. He got back to full fitness late in the season, but just left his run for a debut a little bit too late. But yeah, on track for a very early season debut for this year.
Here is Nick Bryan, who just sticks that one the wrong side of the goal post. There's a couple of big key position players getting involved early. Even
late.
Nick Cox had a moment there as well.
On
So
track for a very early
Nick
season.
Bryan and Harrison Jones. So some exciting glimpses for Essendon fans early. Adam Sard's been good against his former side. He's had a couple of moments where he's chopped off down back and his run's been exciting. He's that player that's so dependable defensively. A lot of the work that gets highlighted from Adam Sard is the offensive side of his game. He's so dependable defensively as well, as Patrick Cripps takes a really strong mark. Now, Sam Walsh was clattered after the ball had been kicked by Zach Merritt. The Blues go inside 50 quickly on the back of it, but here is Nick Cox, who's had a really good start to this third quarter, Nick Cox, hasn't he?
He certainly has. We haven't mentioned much of Sam Walsh throughout the day, but interesting there for Zach Merritt to be involved in a heavy collision with Sam Walsh. They do have a bit of a background together via Cobden, so we see a 50-metre penalty being paid.
Just not allowed to move your feet there, as Ed Kerner was. That one was a bit stiff because he was actually moving backwards. But
if you're told to stand, then
yes, you're not allowed to move at all. Doesn't even matter if you're moving backwards. So that's that new rule coming into effect, and that's another really strong mark from Harrison Jones. He's probably still got some upper body weight to put on. He's a bit slender in his frame, but he's getting to the front of every contest at the moment, taking a couple of really strong, nice marks.
He is, yeah. He's probably had the better of Plowman across the day, you'd say.
Yes.
Plowman finished 4th in the club's best and fairest for 2020, and he's internally viewed as a bit of an unspoken leader. Mm-hmm. And having been a part of that group for that week up in Gold Coast, he did set the tone in some things in terms of the defensive brigade, but Jones has calmly and pretty confidently slotted that goal. And I remember watching him at the Calder Cannons, Riley, and also for Vic Metro, and as I said earlier, this is a heavier version than he was at that point. So he has actually built up a little bit, and there's still a way to go on that front. But his ability to just convert his kicks, and it's so underrated, isn't it, in the modern game? If you can actually make the most of your opportunities, you don't need as many. And look, that has been the question for Ben Rutten across the pre-season and his coaching panel. How is the Bombers going to kick enough goals to compete with the better sides and to push up the ladder from last year's pretty disappointing campaign? They won 1 out of their last 10 games of the season. But the signs today have suggested that against Carlton, who is a high-scoring side, that they can piece together the parts. And look at the group. It's Jones, it's Wright, it's Perkins, it's Braden Ham inside the forward 50. So some new faces and new roles being played.
Here is Ham going inside 50 and looking for that Cale Hooker, I think, who snaps around the body, and the ball's just smothered slightly. Geez, Liam Jones was lucky not to get away a throwing free kick there as the ball trickles towards the boundary. Yeah, Harry Jones, the only multiple goal kickers so far. So he's got 2 of Essendon's 6. But you did mention that Peter Wright's hit the scoreboard. Alec Waterman, not on the list yet, but has had some exciting moments. He's hit the scoreboard. Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuiti's hit the scoreboard, which is probably what you want to see from Essendon, because they're going to be the guys that are going to kick the goals at different stages throughout the year as Zach Williams wheels around but without much of a target, and Jordan Ridley will gobble them up all day if he gets the opportunity.
I also think it's up to the Essendon midfielders too to hit the scoreboard a lot more than they have in previous years. Last year, Dylan Shield kicked a couple, Zach Merritt kicked a couple, but Andy McGrath didn't kick a goal all season. So if those 3 can start combining for a little bit more, then there's a lot to work with. And it was a good contest there, wasn't it, from Perkins, who put his body on the line.
Nick Hine now delivering this one inside 50. Jones coming across. Geez, he crunched the pack and he's been paid the mark. I'm not sure he held it for long enough, but it's
amazing work.
Very strong leap and athletic leap from Liam Jones. That's what Carlton fans have become accustomed to since he moved into a defensive post. He's willing to throw his body around back there and impact the contest in any way possible. And it was actually interesting to hear Jacob Wiedering speak earlier this week about winning the best and fairest on Friday night, and just said that without meaning to disrespect what the best and fairest means to Carlton, but he said if he could share it, he would, because he said he owes as much of it to Liam Jones as anyone else, just given that he's able to do so much of his work in taking a man and chopping off a man, and formed a pretty solid defensive partnership back there as Setterfield looks for Jack Silvani. Just the kick just held up a little bit in that wind. Patrick Cripps went in way too ambitiously and gives away a free kick.
To Laverty, who's on the ground playing, as I mentioned, in that half-back role. Big year for Jayden Laverty this year in terms of his career. There's been some injury setbacks throughout. It seems like whenever he's about to get going, he gets hurt. Last year was one of a number of syndesmosis victims for the Bombers, alongside Jake Stringer, Andy McGrath too, just when he started to really hold his own in that lineup. So hopefully a change of position can result in a change of luck, and we can see a bit more from Jayden Laverty, a top 20 pick from 2014, and still working out his game at the top level.
Carlton moving this ball nicely from one flank to the other, and eventually finding Jack Nunes, who's well accustomed to this area of the field. If you remember last year's match winning after the siren goal against Fremantle, a really nice pinpoint kick that we just see there on the replay from Sam Petrevski-Seton. There's been a lot of questions floating around about whether Sam Petrevski-Seton will potentially move back into the midfield. He was drafted as a midfielder. He's gone to half-back under David Teague, and I think that's what he provides in that position, as Jack Nunes absolutely flushes that from 55 and puts it through. So the Blues reclaim the lead by 2 points. But Sam Petrevski-Seton is an interesting one, because we had a chat about him a couple of weeks ago when we were watching the intra-club, whether or not he can push through the midfield again, because he was such a contested ball winner as a junior playing over in WA through that midfield. But he's got such composure on either side of the foot that you can see why the Blues would like him off half-back, because he is that calm head that can deliver the footy so precisely with his left or his right foot. So where do you see him long-term, though? Because it seems like, once again, he's going to be lining up there across half-back.
He actually got addicted to kicking on his left foot as a junior. He's a right footer, and I remember asking him, why do you go on your left so much? And he said, oh, because I can. So he's got the ability to do it, and he loves it. It does open up the ground for him across half-back, because if you can go on both sides and your opponent doesn't know exactly which side you will go on, then it gives you options. So I like the fact he's at half-back, because you put him against Sard and Doherty, and there's 3 very different half-back rebounders, all in their different styles, and he's one of them.
Geez, this is exciting. One bounce through the middle and then straightening up on that left foot, which he's known to do, and that's a good mark from Patrick Cripps.
Geez, if any piece of play can sum up why the Blues went so hard, and this management team headed by Nick Austin and Mickey Resta went so hard at Adam Sard, then that was it, wasn't it? That was symbolic Sard, really, off half-back, and a dashing kick. And
a pivotal handball out of the contest from Paddy Dow. That's the work in congestion that we've seen from him as a junior, that made him that pick 3 in the 2017 draft. That ability to get clean hands out of a contest, give it off to Adam Sard, who took a bounce and found Cripps. And that's a dangerous prospect for Carlton as well. I mean, having Patrick Cripps, having someone able to run through the midfield, just got rid of Aaron Francis probably a touch too easily then, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He's a big boy though, isn't he? And even as a key back in Francis, he's probably outsized by this midfield beast in Paddy Cripps, who's spent the summer beefing up again, putting on strength. Last year went more down the angle of improving his fitness and being more of a running type of midfielder. Probably didn't work out especially for him, so he's gone back to his old habits, and they're playing out of the goal square. It's a pretty imposing prospect to stop as a key defender.
Dev Smith now racing forward. Interesting, before we saw a vision of Ben Rutten coaching from the bench. Is that something you expect from the first-year coach this year?
Yeah, I mean, John Worsfold did it in stages last year, and for most of last year, really, because he had Ben Rutten and Blake Carosella, who's obviously such a trusted assistant back in the box as well. You know, the Bombers coaching panel has had a bit of a rejig over summer. They recently lost James Kelly, who quit the club. Daniel Giansiracusa, who joined from the Western Bulldogs last year and was voted the AFL-CIO's Assistant Coach of the Year in 2020. He's joined and is viewed as a senior coach in waiting. So perhaps in part it's to help embolden his progress at the club, but Ben Rutten, obviously a really key part of what the Bombers are planning to do throughout 2021. But this is his game plan. This is his system. It's going to take a little bit of time to embed that properly. And before he gets his full list at hand too, we need a couple of years for him to be able to get to that stage.
Kick forward now. It's well tapped away by Cunningham, but just can't get onto the second ball. Ridley nips that off and it's out for a throw-in. Pitney against Peter Wright in the ruck and just tosses him aside there. Out to Dow, who gets a nice sweeping handball to Martin and Curnow, and they go forward again. Haven't seen much of Harry Kai so far in this game.
No, James Stewart's done a pretty good job, I thought. Harry Mackay started pretty well and set up a couple of opportunities and kicked one of his own, but Stewart's more than held his own, and this is, as we mentioned, a new role for him as a full-time defender, and that's where Michael Hurley, had he not gone down with his hip infection, a mysterious hip infection, the club's still getting to the bottom of how that actually arose, but he had been training as a key forward, which in itself was going to be an interesting dynamic, how they combine their younger forwards with their more senior options down there.
Devon Smith now out of the middle, just tapping that through for behind. So the Blues with a slender lead. 2 kicks in it at the moment as Aaron Francis mops up. He's got the job on Paddy Cripps, who spent the majority of this third term resting out of the goal square. Kicked a nice goal before if you just missed it. Pitney finds himself with the footy. Sam Walsh, who's stepped more into the midfield with Cripps forward, delivers that inside.
Yeah, and I think the role for Walsh, the best role for Walsh, is as an inside midfielder. I know last year he turned his game into being one of the best young wingmen in the competition.
Cunningham kicks that through, but it's shepherded through by James Stewart.
And if the All-Australian selectors picked wingman on the wing, he would have been in the discussion for one of those spots, because he ended the year in sensational touch. Finished second in the Carlton Best and Fairest last week, but Yeah, I think his best spot and his spot of the future is as an inside ball getter who can just use that breakaway pace, which he does have. He does have some burst, and also the endurance level that he has. And he's a professional. So excited to see what year 3 brings for Sam Walsh.
Tom Williams with a nice fend off and kick inside 50, but it's Nick Hind and Aaron Francis mopping up there for Essendon, and Zach Merritt will clear them out of defensive 50 with a kick to Braden Ham, who's got his hands on the footy quite a fair bit today, Braden Ham. You'd have to be pretty pleased with the signs you've seen from him as well. Apart from that kick, which has gone straight to Sam Doherty. Geez, I tell you what, you give someone a rap, and that's what they do to you.
He has been good, though. He's just looked a little bit more in tune with the way and the role he's meant to be playing. There was a couple of stages last year where playing some defensive wing roles or playing across half forward when Essendon was struggling, that it was a battle for him to get involved. But here, and this is what I like for his game, is the link-up play.
Yep. They've just been close to getting that right all game, Essendon. The passage of handballs streaming out of defence. A couple of players really important in that. Nick Hind, we saw Ham, as you mentioned. Paddy Dowd's a good sidestep from him, but just that final kick inside 50 hasn't been there. Unlike that one from Paddy Dow. We spoke about the work he's done in his finishing this summer, Paddy Dow. That was a lovely finishing kick inside 50 to Harry Mackay, who takes a strong mark. And this is where, having written the article on him earlier this week, I'm sure you're looking to see how his action matches up with the work he's done both mentally and physically over the off-season. Just inside 50, he brings it back nicely and gets his second for the game, Harry Mackay. So he becomes Carlton's first multiple goal kicker as the margin stretches out to 16 points. They're just starting to get on top again here, the Blues.
That was Paddy Dow of 2017.
Yes.
That's the reason he got drafted at pick 3. That's the reason he excited so many Blues supporters. I think it might have even been here at Icon Park in one of those practice games.
Against St Kilda, when he lost his 2 front teeth, remember that?
Correct. It was a big night for Paddy Dow. Paddy Wow got the first nickname, and that was born. But just the sidestep there and the composure, and then the grab from Harry Mackay, who I think we all forget, it's only 23. And when you look at the competition for key forwards, it takes a couple of years to get going, and he's had some injury setbacks. He's only played 48 games. Only 23 of them have been played with Charlie Curnow. So this pairing that the Blues brought in the 2015 draft with their early selections just haven't been out there much together. We know that won't happen for at least the first half of this season again, but when he's out there and dominating in the air like that, it's pretty hard to stop.
Cal Moore, this is why the Blues like him as a ruck option so much, because he can finish up his work and kick long inside 50. That one trickles out for a boundary throw-in. You're right, though, and he provides that point of difference in the Carlton midfield. We spoke pre-game about Zach Williams and that explosive pace that he could offer from stoppages. Paddy Dow's got that as well, and he's got the clean hands, the ability to sidestep through traffic. So it could become a pretty important weapon for Carlton this year if he can get his confidence back and start producing the form that he did at the Geelong Falcons. Here's Zach Fisher one way and the other. Looks like Aaron Francis, who was down the ground. I don't think he wanted that because he might be struggling with something. It might be a knee, it looks like, as that ball's kicked around. It's just slow to get to his feet here, Aaron Francis.
Bit of a limp, yeah.
It looked like he just had a awkward landing when he tried to tackle Zach Williams there, but trainer's out to him. He looks like he's trying to soldier on. The back of screen there, as you can see.
So. Yep. Laverty with the pass out to Brian. Nearly takes control of that grab. McDonald Tipperwoody's been good.
He has been. That's going to be holding the ball against Adam Sard. Another good tackle from the man you were just speaking about, Anthony McDonald-Tipperwoody. He's providing a really good forward target, and his trademark way is lively when the ball hits the deck. And
led the goal kicking last year for the Bombers with 19 majors. Probably not his best year, though. Not in the 30s. Obviously, shortened season, but as we see Aaron Francis leave the ground with that knock to the leg, the way he's leaving without the assistance of trainers would be of some hope, though, for the Bombers that he's dodged anything too serious. As Perkins gets an opportunity here, tackled by Cripps inside 50.
It's probably one of those ones, absolutely no risk and no need to take a risk when we're 3 weeks out from the season.
He is a player who gets the odd nickel and knock as well, and hopefully this one's a very minor one.
High tackle free kick against Devon Smith. I don't think the Bombers will mind too much about that because, as we've mentioned a couple of times today, that physicality and that willingness to hit the contest hard is back for Devon Smith. He looks primed for another pretty significant 2021 season.
You mentioned Francis's history with injuries across his time since being a top 10 pick in 2015, and that's probably pretty stark. A good grab from Pitney and off to Williams. But it's pretty stark in that the numbers that Darcy Parish, who was drafted one pick earlier, has played 93 games at AFL level, and Aaron Francis has played 35. So hopefully this is the year that he can get his body right. And we know his kicking, his overhead marking, his exuberance through that part of the ground can be a weapon for the Bombers.
So Mackay goes top of the goal square there. That's where I personally would just like to see Harry Mackay pin the ears back a bit. 45 out, pretty sharp angle, but when you've been doing that much work on your goal kicking, I think back yourself from there. You're the number one key forward. Have a shot, I reckon. Maybe you might get that message from David Teague after the game. Pitney can't get boot to ball, but Mark Murphy can. Puts it through. Carlton have another. And the lead is out to 23 points. The biggest it has been all day as Mark Murphy has slotted through a goal on that half-forward role that he's playing. He's looked pretty lively down there, Mark Murphy. Maybe Mark Pitney was a bit lucky not to be pinged for holding the ball, but got his hands to the footy and snapped well. He's a good finisher around goal, so you can see why Carlton like their former skipper in that role.
Absolutely, he's sharp, isn't he? And I guess the good thing from a Carlton perspective is they don't need him in the midfield anymore, and you know what a excellent contributor he's been in that role for more than a decade. The number one pick all those years ago. Really hasn't missed a beat throughout his career, apart from the odd injury in the past few years. But yeah, I like it. It's a forward line that you look at now. It's got Harry Mackay, there's Zach Williams down there, Jack Silvani's working into that role, Mark Murphy, we've seen Zach Fisher play there for most of the day. So there's goal kicking options, isn't there?
Yep. Still a few to come back into this side as well. We talk about Mitch McGovern and Levi Casbolt, who aren't here today. Eddie Betts, slow recovery from a calf injury, but he should be playing next week's Amy Community Series fixture against St Kilda. So they have got goal kicking options to come back into this side. And then we haven't even mentioned Charlie Curnow, who's probably still the number one forward if Harry Mackay hasn't taken that mantle from him at the Blues, but we just haven't seen him for such a long time due to those consistent knee setbacks. Paddy Dow trying to get to this contest. Zach Merritt keeps it in play.
I think Nick Bryan's been quite impressive this term.
He has been.
Battling against a more experienced, more mature ruckman, a bigger physically prospect. I think he's looked to fit in quite seamlessly. Obviously, this is the first real time he's actually got to work with his midfield too, so there's chemistry that has to be built there. But won some good tap-outs and around the ground has played his way too.
Jack Martin in the midfield there just can't get a kick that gets beyond Kyle Langford, and Zach Merritt takes it away with a nice pass to Nick Cox, who finds Jai Caldwell a couple of new faces for Essendon. That's a very nice kick too. Yeah. Anthony McDonald-Tipungruti, who just beats Lockie Plowman on the lead and takes a mark inside 50 and will go back for his second of the day.
A lot of Essendon supporters wouldn't have seen too much of Jai Caldwell before today because injuries and preparation that the Giants put into him over a couple of seasons meant that he only played 9 games last year, 2 the previous year in his debut. He debuted in that famous game in Canberra where it snowed that night for the Giants, so pretty infamous debut for Jai in that respect, but
just doesn't get there from Anthony McDonald-Tipungruti, but they have another opportunity with Peter Wright, who can't hook it around his body.
But the best thing about Jai is that he comes to the club from an Essendon perspective and he's got that groundwork of his body all of a sudden having confidence in that.
Yep.
And as a draftee, he didn't have that either for his under-18 season, so it's been 3 injury-interrupted seasons for him. And now the Giants have done that work, and that was partly the reason they were so disappointed that he left at the end of last year, because they rated him so highly. He was a part of that 2018 Super Draft, the second Super Draft that we all talk about, and Sam Walsh was at the top of that pool.
There is Sam Walsh. Nice flowing move this from Carlton. Can Zach Fisher find the kick inside 50? I tell you what, he sells some nice candy to James Stewart and picks out Jack Martin. And here is Sam Petrevski-Seton, who's not a noted goal kicker, and it's perhaps why he finds Zach Williams. So it was interesting for the Blues that the little rotation they made just prior to this movement, Patrick Cripps went off the field for a break. He'd been resting forward. And Zach Williams, who had spent almost the entirety of the quarter playing out of the middle from centre bounces, moved into his position out at the goal square. And now he's taken this mark and will look to further extend Carlton's lead.
And if he can become another string to David Teague's bow as a forward, it makes him an even more exciting package, doesn't it, really? Because you have this weaponry, don't you, that can go forward. And even if you had to, there's an injury or there's someone out of form across half back. He's already done that for the best part of his career before becoming a free agent last year. So that was a really nice finish.
It was. So the Blues, their lead is out to 29 points. They've got a bit of a run on in this third quarter. But as you mentioned, Zach Williams, something that we haven't necessarily seen him do a lot throughout his career is go forward and kick goals. But he kicked a couple in the intra-club that we were at a couple of weeks ago, and he's added one today. But playing out of the goal square, really nice pass from Sam Petrevski-Seton to find him.
Very unselfish player, Sam Petrevski-Seton. That's probably half the reason why he doesn't hit the scoreboard too much, because he's very welcoming of other people getting their chance in front of the big sticks.
You do mention that it is quite a versatile midfield for the Blues. We've seen Cripps rest forward. Zach Fisher's now in the goal square up against Jaden Laverty. And now we've got Jack Martin, who's spent the majority of the game forward, starting in this centre bounce. Lockie Fogarty's had a couple in there. Sam Walsh has had a couple in there. So it is a very versatile Carlton midfield that can do a bit of everything as Patrick Cripps wins yet another clearance. He's been one of the game's most dominant players today. And Will Setterfield drives the Blues forward. Harry Mackay just can't mark.
Well done by Stewart there as well. And we see...
He's been good across half-back, hasn't he?
See Jordan Ridley with the kick out, and probably haven't seen as much of Ridley with the intercept work today as we become accustomed to last year, but he's a really nice kick too. So he's clearly been appointed the kick-out specialist for the Bombers.
Archie Perkins, you could see what he was trying to do, but Jack Martin's a hard man to get around. He's noted for his tackling ability at Carlton. Stops the first-year midfielder in his tracks there. Lockie Fogarty goes inside 50. Just can't find him. It's a lovely goal from Paddy Dow, who takes the ball at its highest point and slots it through on the goal line. He's got a couple. Carlton's lead is out to 6 goals. But I'll tell you what, from a Carlton perspective, it's Paddy Dow who's excited you the most today, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Just looks comfortable again at the level. And it's amazing what a full summer, a full season of preparation. Obviously, Andrew Russell at the Blues has had a real input in building the Paddy Dow package in terms of using that speed and explosiveness out of the centre, which is the lasting image I'll always have of Paddy Dow's under-18 season, that ability for just break a tackle, kick it inside 50 and do it again and again and again. So for him to be able to push forward today, kick a couple of goals, he's got 2 already, really adds something to what he's doing with his footy. And I'd say that if the game stopped now, he'd be pretty happy with what he's been able to produce so far, and just a little bit of confidence and self-belief that, hey, after an injury-interrupted season, I'm ready to take another step forward. Some good signs for the Bombers, though, in terms of Aaron Francis. Did leave the track and go down to the rooms for some medical assistance, but is now warming up again on the boundary line, so it looks like that was just a knock earlier this term, and we'll be back.
Here is Nick Cox. He's had a fair bit of it in this quarter, Nick Cox. And he drills that inside 50. Won't quite make the distance, and Jacob Wiedering is standing underneath it to take a very strong mark. There is Aaron Francis. Just did a few laps around the boundary, looks set to come back on. So I reckon if you're bringing on a player who's hobbled off the field in a practice match 3 weeks before round 1, you're probably pretty confident that they're right to go. So
you mentioned Nick Cox there, Riley, and for Essendon supporters who are getting accustomed to what he plays like, who he plays like, and what he might be able to do in the future, think Mark Blitzarves. That's the type of player I think you should look at Nick Cox as being. Blitzarves, we know the history of as a steeple chaser, and athletically his background is amazing. Big tackle there from Sam Walsh.
Just too high.
On Will Snelling. But I think in the future, that's the Nick Cox role. That where's he going to line up every week, and what can he do?
Peter Wright will get this free kick. He was just backed into there by Tom Williamson, who didn't have his eyes on the footy. So Peter Wright made a pretty lively start to this one. He's tapered out a little bit, but should go back and drill his second goal here. So at the end of the day, if you're an Essendon fan, you see multiple goals to Harrison Jones and Peter Wright, you've got to be pretty comforted in some sense that they can be notable goal kickers at different stages throughout this year. And I might have just spoken a touch too soon. No, he has drilled that one, Peter Wright. Right on the siren. So the margin is going to be 30 points at three-quarter time. Carlton with a 6-goal third quarter moves to 12-8-80. And the Bombers, 7-8-50. That one came right off the side of the boot from Peter Wright, but just snuck through. So multiple goal kicks for the Blues. Harry Mackay and Paddy Dow have each got 2 for the Bombers. Harrison Jones and Peter Wright have each got 2 as well. Some exciting signs from both sides here at this practice match at Icon Park. It's Carlton by 30 points at three-quarter time. We'll be back momentarily for the start of the final term.